Hi, friends of the planet, Miro here. And today we're really excited to have back one of our first and most wonderful friends of the planet, Alani Wilhelm, who runs the Conservation International Center for Oceans. So, Alani, thank you so much for taking a little bit more time to be with us today. We talked to you last week, but you have a really big announcement coming out of your program. So, can you tell us a little bit more about this? It's a partnership between Conservation International and a slew of other really great partners. I wanted to pick up a little bit more on marine protected areas and ask what the hardest part is about creating very large MPAs. And is it a matter of getting countries to set aside that much space from industrial activity, or is it the management of the MPAs after they're initiated? So can you talk a little more about that?
Well, that's like a Kahoot question, right? It's binary, like red or blue. Is it one
Yeah.
or the other? It depends. And I'm not trying to have a middle of the ground, but it depends on the situation on the ground and what the politics are, what the readiness is. But I would say if I was forced to choose, like this was a Kahoot and I could just pick one color, I would pick really the implementation. And for two reasons. One, if you look at the history of protected areas on land or in the ocean, there's always been a struggle with paper parks, right? There's always been a struggle with stand up. And it's not just in the environment. Healthcare, we cut a ribbon, we said about the new whatever program we're going to have, or we're going to do child protection, or we're going to do help for the elderly. There's this moment, there's a ribbon cutting, it's a political decision. And then, it really, the proof's in the pudding of, did you really have those inclusiveness that you said you were? Was it really based on, sound science or need? How did you match kind of the solution to the problems on the ground? Does it still make sense, right? That stuff lingers. And that's why there's paper blanks, right? People focus on paper parks for conservation, but this is a human problem, right? We do that and we forget and we move on. I always say, if you go and do a protected area, right, the intention, even if people don't say it out loud, is to protect something forever. Well, forever's a really, really, really long time. Do we actually set them up for forever? Do we think about them and make sure the legal structure and the regulations are as robust as they can be with forever in mind, right? I don't think we do. We might be getting a little bit better, but we don't really think about forever. And so if you think about forever, it's a journey, right? It's not like, voila, we have this thing and it was perfect. I've not seen a designation of anything ever on any topic that's perfect. It's a journey. So what you're trying to get it to be is perfect enough where you open the door, but not so imperfect that you've actually tied your hands behind your back and prevented flexibility moving forward. Now that's hard, right? Because ideology, and often the way we've looked at marine conservation is it's either we fish the heck or use the heck out of one place, or we protect the heck out of one place. And come on, we really need to push ourselves to have better models, because that's not working. And what it does is it falsely polarizes. It falsely makes people choose as if that's a choice. It's not, right? It's really about benefits. The ocean's out there. It can do lots of stuff for us. What are we asking it to do? And if you ask for something over here, you're going to get less of something over here. But we don't like to make choices as human beings, right? We want it all. And we don't want to have penalties. So we kind of set things up poorly. So I'd say the harder bit is the long term, because people forget. They go, didn't we protect Papahanaumoku? Okay, isn't it done? I don't know. Is it forever? Have we reached forever yet? I joke, right? It's not done. And Papahanaumoku Akea has had to remain relevant. I mean, we celebrated 20 years of marine protection in the wider zone as a marine reserve last December. It's like a big moment. I feel kind of old. And you realize now I'm dealing with the next generation. The people who were with us on the road and pushed us, and the kupuna, the elders that tapped me on the shoulder to help, they've passed. Now it's the next generation. And do they understand what it is? Do they still value it? Do they still want to get on board and participate, right? It's constantly something that you have to feed. And that community engagement and ownership is perpetual.
I'm wondering about how much of the ocean you think really is protected. We talked about paper parks, and there's this big push for 30% of the ocean to be protected by 2030. And, we got a lot of catching up to do because the land's gotten way ahead on this. So what do you think?
I've worked my whole career in marine conservation avoiding picking and choosing between databases, because I'd say I'm happy when we get closer to anywhere near 30, I'll be happy to engage in that dialogue of who's counting and what counts and what's more important than what. But I really guard against that, because ideology is driving us to choose and to already put labels on kind of still a nascent field. And the truth is, the bottom line is, the answer to how much is protected, not nearly enough. full stop. And when it gets closer to almost enough, I'll be happy to engage in that. But right now, can we focus the attention on more instead of arguing with each other about which one? Now, I get that we want to have representation. That's another one of these. Is enough of the area represented? Anywhere from 2.8% to the optimists who say 10. Let's argue about representation when we got a heck of a lot more. Like, I'll take anything at this point because we know that we have little time. The stressors are super great right now, unlike they've ever been, and compounded. That can we just focus our attention not on counting, but on making stuff happen? Because that's my bias. I come from like implementing crazy ideas on the ground. And I just kind of want to ask our community to spend a little bit less time kind of counting what is like pennies on there and putting all that great effort and energy into just getting stuff done.
That's totally fair. And I wanted to ask if you think that it's possible to achieve protecting 30% of the ocean by 2030 without the high seas, protecting areas in the high seas outside of national boundaries.
No way. You can't just do the math. Not possible. We have to work out in the high seas. We have to work with existing. And then hopefully if the BBNJ, Biodiversity Beyond National Jurisdictions Convention and dialogues can move forward, we have to try all of those things. If you just do the math, you're not going to get it out of exclusive economic zones. No way. And then you would also have a real representation issue, except for the countries that do have really deep water, like big Pacific EEZs or large continental shelf kind of EEZs, then you can get more representation. We know so little about the high seas that any characterization about them being deserts, I mean, drain it out and look at all those mountains. Are they really deserts? Or is it just that we don't know? Because our science and what we know as our biases that we've built are really built in the near shore. Now, I'm biased in the other way. Like, I grew up in Hawaii, most remote archipelago on the planet. You know, the idea of our neighbors being Japan and California, our closest neighbors, gives us a sense of scale and a sense of the importance of that open ocean and a sense of comfort about that. But not everybody's comfortable. Not everybody knows about that because we kind of stay closer to home. So we have a hard time imagining that. We also have a hard time imagining those places running out of fish or being damaged by the little thing I do. But I hope that I know at least my kids, they get it. They know because they're bombarded with it, right? But there's still generations who are in decision-making situations now that either don't want to believe it or have not really been exposed and still really have that kind of terrestrial mindset. And that's what's hard, right? And you think about how do you protect it? So for me, the idea is the ocean's places. We protect places. So let's give breath and character and life to the open ocean, not this big hug 64% of our ocean, but each of these places are underwater seamounts. They're open ocean areas where they might be migratory areas for highly migratory species or really important for seabirds. How do we bring character? And I think we've learned a lot from large scale MPAs, right? It's not that different from what we have asked large scale MPAs to do. You know, there's no line in the ocean that the seabirds go, oh, sorry, that's an exclusive economic zone, better turn around. What we do to manage and how we've been able to look at monitoring, those lessons can all be applied. Technically, it's totally possible. Politically is what we have to work on.